Hello everyone, and welcome back for the 5th episode of A Modern Take On. In this episode, we'll be covering something that's far more alien to me than Metroid, the first entry in the Castlevania series on the NES. I know next to nothing about Castlevania, besides of course that there's two characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and that Dracula is supposed to be in here somewhere. There's no time given for the overall plot of this game in particular, I'll just read what I found in the manual. The manual for Castlevania simply says that we're here to dispel the curse of the evil Count, which makes me think they couldn't say Dracula for copyright infringement reasons. Besides that, the main character I know from other sources is Simon Belmont. He's from a family of vampire hunters that has been at it for centuries. Simon is, I think, the 4th Belmont in the family line. I guess that's all you really need. Getting rid of Dracula is your job, so let's not delay any longer. Castlevania is divided into 6 levels, which are then further divided into 3 sections per level. You can see which stage of the level you're on in the top right corner. This stage and level system separates game overs from life loss. Losing a life will reset to the beginning of a stage, while losing all of your lives will restart you at the beginning of a 3-stage level. It's a lenient system, but for good reason. Castlevania is definitely a type of game you'll need to sink time into. It won't be apparent in these beginning levels, but I'll have a lot more to say around level 4 about it. Your main weapon is a whip that lashes out directly in front of you. It's a bit sluggish and can only aim in the direction you're facing, but you won't encounter any enemies that can avoid it, except for the bats sometimes. With the whip, you can break all of the candles and fire braziers in order to obtain items. Most of the time you'll get hearts, which serve as a sort of currency for Simon, and also some upgrades for your basic attack that turn it into a stronger mace. The hearts you pick up actually have nothing to do with health, but instead you can find some food hidden in the stages that will refill it. There are some roast chickens hiding in the architecture of Dracula's castle. Sometimes the candles or enemies you fight will drop different relics and weapons as well that are stored in the square on the HUD. There are special items that use the hearts you collect as fuel for a special function, and there are a total of 5 extra weapons. You can only lose these special weapons upon losing a life. There's the dagger, the boomerang, the axe, the watch, and the holy water. Each of these weapons have situational aim, and not all of them are simply better than others, though I'll say the watch is beneficial if this is your first time playing. The watch will freeze all enemies on screen for a few seconds so you can catch your breath. To use an item, hold up and then attack. Here's a problem to consider. Of your special weapons, you can only have 1 on screen at a time. To fix this, there's another item which looks like the Roman numeral 2 and 3, which allow you to have 2 then 3 weapons on a screen at a time. These are especially good for the boomerang, which stays on the screen for a while. The last items that have a chance to drop from enemies are more hearts for weapons, a crucifix that clears the screen, an invisibility potion that allows you to pass through enemies and projectiles, and money for points. All this to say that, after looking over the basic gameplay loop, I may have lied when I said I wasn't familiar with this. My connection to Castlevania is a little funny. There was an indie game in 2014 called Shovel Knight that celebrated this type of game, and I did beat that. In fact, Shovel Knight has the same kind of special weapon function as Castlevania, just with more weapons that you have in your inventory and can use at will. And I really like that game. I hope that's a good sign. Shovel Knight does combine elements from other NES games into its design, so it isn't the exact same, but it's close enough. Now let's talk about how Castlevania looks. I think this game is a bit of a mess, but it might be intended to be that way. I'm not playing it on a CRT, so maybe the jumble of pixels in the background would look far more like a crumbling courtyard than it does in HD. Simon and the monsters have a simpler and more cohesive design than the background. There will be later stages that have a more structured design, which is easier to parse, but if you're ever at a loss for where the platforms are, usually the lighter pixels are indicative of usable ground. This first stage of the game is of course the easiest, only possessing enemies with the simplest AI. Appear on the sides of the screen and make a break for it. Just hit them. They'll give you all the ammo you could ever want for your special weapons, and if you want to farm enemies, there's nothing stopping you. There's a time limit that grants extra points per second left at level completion, but as a stage hazard, it's lenient. You'll have way more than enough time if you keep walking. And just like that, I've said everything that you could need to know about Castlevania and its foundation. And what that now means for the rest of the levels is just differences in enemies and difficulty. But by all means, that isn't going to shorten the length of this video. Oh no, I have many game overs to show off. Castlevania is one of those NES games, which you have to force your way into it. I promise, however, that I can explain why Castlevania isn't just another mindless platformer of the late 80s. It will come in due time. Firstly, I'm going to make a serious complaint about stairs. Castlevania's stairs are more terrifying than any other obstacle or enemy and have sent me careening into the abyss more than even Dracula did. I want to say that all of the stair deaths were my fault, but not knowing what's coming while on a flight of stairs is what usually does it. Stairs are most importantly not collidable. They're a different sort of ground that you have to interact with to use. In order to board a flight of stairs, you need to hit up on the D-pad when you're right next to them, or down if you need to use them to go down. Simon will then enter stairs mode, where left and right move you diagonally in the stairs direction. The irritating secret behind the stairs is that once you are on the stairs, you have to slow down and take them one at a time until you are able to dismount the flight at your destination. You cannot jump off of the stairs at any point that you are on them. Oh sure, you can attack, but you better have your move planned ahead of time, because Simon climbs the stairs at the same rate that Interstate 15 through Las Vegas does on a Saturday night. It's so slow, you could get a drink and just sit the controller under something. Actually, don't do that. You will get hit by a bat and fall to your demise. That's the other thing. The only thing that can get you off of the stairs besides reaching a platform are enemies. It's why I said stairs are not collidable. Oh, and you can only board stairs from a platform. You get hit on the stairs and there is no going back. Not to mention that one of Castlevania's favorite things is to use stairs for vertical map transitions. Falling at any point to the bottom of the screen, even if you just came from a room below, means you've lost a life and have to start back a stage. Now how about a cherry on top of that? Simon Belmont hits terminal velocity on frame 1 in the air. And the cherry on top of that cherry, you ever hear of screen wrapping? A common practice with NES and SNES games is to measure the position of sprites on the screen, and when the sprite reaches the edge of the screen, their position value loops and the sprite is sent back to the other side. This counts for both vertical position and horizontal position. So you can imagine if you get hit while climbing stairs up to the next floor, and then when you get hit, well, the knockback will hit you into the ceiling, which loops your vertical position, and suddenly the game thinks you're underground, which means you perish instantly. It's rare that this happens, but not being on the stairs near an edge is always a kill confirm. But the first 3 stages are way too short to be talking about technicalities which matter later. In the last room of the first level, you're confronted by a huge vampire bat. It'll try to fly to your location, but if you have the stopwatch item, you can freeze it and then just spam the whip until it explodes. Every single boss in this game has a reliable method by which to cheese the fight or remove the difficulty entirely, and this first boss really doesn't need a special strategy anyway. You get an orb for your troubles, and the time left in the level is added to your score, plus your leftover ammo for special weapons. Nice. The next level brings a slight step up in difficulty and houses Medusa as a more recognizable boss. It's a better looking level than the last, albeit the same through and through, and it also presents me an opportunity to talk about hidden items. There's no punishment for looking for hidden items, as you can check any wall tile with your whip, and it may offer a score bonus or even health restoration, which are really hard to find. You just have to guess where the breakable tiles are, and thankfully they are never used for any sort of progression, so you don't have to get stuck anywhere. The main gimmick of this level are flying Medusa heads that move in a wave pattern across the screen. It's in no way unfair, and it serves as a hard lesson to new players, including me. A huge part of Simon's movement is preservation of momentum. If Simon jumps, he will keep moving in that direction that he was moving before he jumped, with no way to reverse until landing. That means you need to decide when to jump carefully and hope that you'll make it or not overshoot the jump. This applies to the Medusa heads because in order to jump over them, you have to be able to reliably predict their movement. This can get a bit overwhelming if other enemies and platforming is thrown into the mix. Oh, and while we're on the topic of momentum, when Simon gets hit by something, he'll jump backwards about 2 tiles. It didn't matter too much on the first level because there were barely any pitfalls, but this is the moment it starts to matter. It can get incredibly annoying to try defending yourself, get hit by something you didn't read ahead of time, and be knocked back into a 5-story fall. Things do respawn in Castlevania, so it's in your best interest to stay moving. At least, there's certain parts of the level, like an invisible wall, that turns respawns on and off, so you can get up the stairs fairly. Thanks. This will also be the first level that introduces moving platforms, which work just fine, but have iffy edges that are liable to send Simon plummeting to his demise if you're not careful. The hitbox is exactly as big as the platform itself, so jump off a little before the edge. All I really gotta say is that the programmers at Konami know a little bit more about relative velocity than most kids on Scratch do. Next up, we have cannon enemies that shoot fireballs when on screen, directly horizontal from their position. They take 6 hits from the best whip to destroy, which I might mention is enough time for them to reload and fire again, so from out of their line of sight, sub-weapons work well against them first. The fireball is really the only projectile that any enemy will have, besides the boss of level 3 and 5, and they can be destroyed with the whip. Their damage adds up quickly if you don't. Furthermore, they're hard to hit with the whip with the wind-up time, so there's that, but I have no complaints myself, nothing that can't be learnt, at least not until the fireballs start coming from different directions. The last unique stage element are these spiked smashing pistons. Now let's talk a little bit about respect. You have to respect the piston space at all times because touching the spikes at any point will end you, and I have no idea why that particular one doesn't fall all of the way to the floor, but it doesn't. You can crouch to dodge it at least. The spike respect still stands, and it makes it really difficult to free the holy water from one of the candles in between. Anyway, let's skip ahead to the boss of this particular level, a flying Medusa head. It behaves similarly to the vampire bat boss from the previous stage, except it'll sometimes drop snakes on the floor that do a single point of damage. But it doesn't have to do anything at all if you get here with the holy water. Might as well bring that up now. I said before that all of these sub-weapons have no advantage over one another. I totally lied. The holy water is without a doubt the most broken sub-weapon you can get. And it's simple. The time freezing watch doesn't work on bosses. It'll stop them for half of a second before they start moving again. Every other weapon just does damage and is sometimes hard to line up. The holy water would be the same if it didn't stun literally everything for a full second. If you have double or triple shot, you can keep basically any boss in the game stun locked until they're defeated, even the final boss. You make it to the boss with a holy water, you've already won. Once again, we are climbing the castle, only this time it'll be outside rather than from inside, and it's yellow. What a time to introduce 2 new enemies that will be around for the rest of the game. A skeleton that throws bones, and this little red gremlin that makes you tear your hair out in anger. Yep, these suck. I don't even know what they're called. They have the most unpredictable and unavoidable movement in the entire game. If you do not deal with them the moment that they come on screen, you're guaranteed to get hit for half of your health bar, and this is only the first appearance. They are a highly reoccurring enemy, all the way to the final confrontation. Better get used to them. On the other hand, the skeletons are a minor annoyance more than anything. They're a pain to deal with if you're on a straight platform with them, but situations like that will almost never come up. They move back and forth in an erratic pattern and will jump up to platforms if there are any. While doing so, they throw as many bones as is allowed for the NES sprite limit in the same arc. Normally, you wouldn't be able to get close, but if the bones touch the top part of the screen, they despawn. Literally no danger. That fact is a surprise tool that will help us later. On the top level of the battlements, there are a bunch of crows hanging around with some more complex movement, but at least they're predictable. They'll fly in a curved pattern repeatedly until they reach eye level with Simon, and then fly at full speed towards him, which usually means that you can just whip them out of the air, and that's that. Sometimes they'll be slightly out of whip range, so just jump before they start flying. Oh, and they can turn around. I know, incredible technology here. You know what would be really good right now? More Medusa heads. Send them. I didn't mention that the Medusa heads spawn on whichever side of the screen Simon is facing, so turning around at any point in this hallway is really bad. And surprise skeleton for the mix, plus a skeleton jump. The last section of the battlements contains a cannon from the last level, except this time it's actually level with you, and Medusa heads at the same time. The watch helps. Right after that though comes the boss for this level, 2 mummies that throw their bandages. Without a doubt, the easiest boss in the entire game. Want to sit in the middle of the mummies and get absolutely destroyed? Nah. Sit on this ledge and spam the B button. They can almost never get you with the hits done. I'm a weenie. Welcome to the skeleton-covered graveyard of Dracula's castle, and now that we're in the second half of the game, we're turning the difficulty up quite a bit. Introducing the Vampire Bat. This is the most simple enemy in the game. It flies across the screen, spawns every so often, etc. The purpose of the Vampire Bat is to get rid of players that try to optimize routes through the level because they are sometimes just out of reach of the whip. They add a factor of unpredictability to the game that specifically goes against how I play, and I mean specifically this flipping bat right here. This one right above the water. Listen, do you know how many times I have gotten hit into the water by this one bat? I said every so often. The amount of time between bat spawns is the same. You could just wait for a bat to appear and then ride the precarious platform over, but this is my reward for being impatient. At least the fishmen things pop up in the exact same places every time. They're easy to deal with, even when it seems like they're clipping through the ceiling, which is weird. Oh, PSA, the skeletons and numerous bones scattered across the level don't count as platforms. I found that out immediately. I'm really sorry, most of the footage I have of the Catacombs level is me dying to the bat over and over. I'm not joking, it's sad. But hey, we're outside, and there are birds dropping the horrible red imps out of the sky. That is scathing. You can get rid of them before they hit the ground, but if you even let one go, then you're getting dogpiled. They appear from both sides, and it's a test of your reaction speed to get rid of them the moment they're dropped. There's no point in getting rid of the birds, they will just keep coming back. Guarding the entrance back to the castle is one enemy I had a really hard time with. The skeleton dragon. I mean, if this was Final Fantasy, I would just set it on fire and then we'd be done, but all I've got is a whip and a prayer. The skeleton dragon seems to move randomly and shoot fireballs directly at Simon, which you'll learn quickly that fireballs from various directions are so unbelievably bad to dodge, mostly because if you just dodge one, you'll have to dodge another, and they move faster than you. It's not good. When I was on my first time through, I struggled a lot with the dragons. But on a second playthrough, this time on my NES with a real cartridge, I noticed something. The movement of the dragon is actually predictable, because they can only shoot fireballs from one position. In order to shoot, they need to return to a certain angle, and for each dragon, that angle is much within reach of the whip, so all you really need to do is wait for the dragon to return to its angle and start swinging. You'll hit the fireball too, and then you can reliably destroy the dragons without getting hit every single time. I even got to the boss of this level without getting hit once. Castlevania may seem like unpredictable chaos at first, but then you realize that everything in this game can be dealt with one way or another, no glitches required, and that's what makes Castlevania different than some of the other action platformers slop on the NES and SNES. So, speaking of the boss, there is a serious gulf of difficulty between the first 3 bosses and the last 3 bosses, starting with Frankenstein here. Frankenstein has an invulnerable imp, well, that's just great, that can shoot at you. That's friggin' evil. It does so much damage. Let's just say that the first time I fought this boss, I got incredibly lucky. On my second original hardware playthrough, this took me an hour. I don't know how to reliably predict the imp. You just have to get your hits in early while it's still perched on Frankenstein's head and you can stun it. Second last level of the game, and we're not nearly done turning the difficulty up. This level's got all of those accursed imps you could ever want, even right at the start. Tons more skeletons that you can't hit until you walk up some stairs or get an axe, but again, their bones despawn at the top, so not really that dangerous. Along with those dangers, there's 2 new enemies to introduce, the red skeleton and the knight. Red skeletons deal 4 ticks of damage, which is really not good, but they are easily avoided. When hit, the red skeletons crumble to the ground and then rebuild themselves after a few seconds. They're also really slow, and they can't go downstairs. Fine by me. Knights are tough but predictable enemies that throw boomerang axes, which are all easily within whipping distance. Hitting them from the front requires you to break their shield first, which takes a few hits. Your boomerang can speed up this process. Otherwise, this purple and white level is unremarkable in gameplay terms. You simply just have to plan out when you are able to ascend the stairways and keep all of the enemies in check. This is my favorite level, aesthetically at least. It surprises me how many different background elements they were able to use all over Dracula's castle and store in the NES's memory. Furthermore, there's a lot more chicken drumsticks I found around this level than the others. It allowed me to stay alive much longer. And then you get to the warden's room on top of the prison and everything falls apart. This is, without a doubt, the hardest room in the game. Medusa heads and knights, all the way to the boss. The whip will do basically nothing here because there are too many things to dodge. Oh, and even when you first come up the stairs, a Medusa head spawns right behind you, so you almost have to choose the lesser of two evils there. The best strategy I found was to use the guaranteed boomerang from the previous floor to deal with all of the enemies around, and the axe projectiles, well, at least if they're not low axes. Just start spamming. If you can't beat them, join them. You'll be lucky if you make it to the end of the hallway with even half of your health remaining, but there's no mercy. Coming up is probably the most annoying boss in the game, especially because it's completely unpredictable and probably uncheesable using the holy water. The literal Grim Reaper guards the doorway to Dracula, and with such ferocity I'm almost inclined to say that this boss is harder. 3 scythes will spawn on the screen. Not invulnerable, thank goodness, and they will go straight for you. The Reaper will hover around, of course it will do contact damage, but that's not the problem. The scythes are the problem, and this will be the moment that most people who get here using save states will stop. It's because after using all of your ammo to get right here, you have none left to combat the scythes, but after doing the insane hallway, you're not going to go back and try setting yourself up for victory, right? Instead, you end up in an endless loop of trying to luck out of this fight, and it doesn't work. It's a fool's trap 38 years in the making, and on my first playthrough it caught me. But to my credit, I did eventually come up with a strategy, and I'm sure that with enough perseverance, I could figure out the hallway before this so I could optimize this fight. It's so difficult to do this game hitless just so you can preserve your health for the boss. If you know Castlevania well enough, you don't need to do that, because you'll already know how the bosses behave. This is not a one-off game. As to how I beat the Reaper, the main thing is to always keep control of the screen. Scythes will keep spawning all of the time, and they will constantly get in your way. But if you have enough of your own weapons flying around the screen, then they'll never get to move much. Just throw as many boomerangs as physically possible. If you keep jumping and throwing them, the Reaper will keep landing on top of them and the battle will be over quickly. Scythes can spawn on top of you, so it's better to run back and forth between the pits on the sides. They are less likely to spawn down there. Right after that whole save state trap, we get another one in the form of the last level. The boss from the first level is a regular enemy that's just sitting on this outside area, and you should not spend time fighting it. Just run. There will be a handful of them all across this rotting bridge, and they are all placed in spots that can be jumped over or circumvented in one way or another. Head into Dracula's tower through the Griffin's mouth. Inside of the tower is pure chaos. Anything that you can think of that was difficult in the previous levels is probably here, especially the birds dropping the imps off. That was doable back in the 4th level when it was completely flat and you can take the imps out before they landed, but not this time. There's platforming included now. The imps can't always get to you, but when you have to vertically cross the screen to get to a stairway, they most definitely can. The stopwatch is helpful here. The method to the madness, besides using the stopwatch to parse the action, is simply running for it. You can't get hit off of the stairs unless your health goes below 0, so you just have to run. Hopefully the imps will throw themselves off the edges trying to get to you, and they can't stand on the stairs, so the only real danger are the birds. As for trying to figure out the background and the foreground, which I admit is a little confusing, all you really need to care about are the yellow bits. The gray parts are in the background. Again, this is a save state trap. There is no real optimal route. This is something that just needs to be learnt. At the left side of the clock tower is the final stairway, fraught with candles that hold plenty of hearts. Outside of this room is the ultimate dramatic stairway that leads to Dracula's resting place. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. At the left side of the clock tower is the final stairway fraught with candles that hold plenty of hearts. Outside of this room is the ultimate dramatic stairway that leads to Dracula's resting place where the showdown will commence. You're given an awful lot of ammo, which is necessary, and then you reach the open coffin. The fight with Dracula is probably the simplest fight in the entire game. No real movement to predict or anything. He teleports around this single room, opens his cape, and fires 3 fireballs at you. And there's thankfully a checkpoint right outside of the fight that only resets if you get a game over. But then you only need to do the short clock tower level over again, so who cares? I said that this fight was simple. I didn't say that it was easy. Deflecting or dodging the fireballs takes really good reaction time, and honestly, the best way to deal with the fireballs is to jump over them. Dracula will usually teleport really close to you anyway, and the only way to deal damage to him is to hit him in the face. The other option is to do what I eventually learned to do and throw the whip out as soon as you see Dracula open his cape. That's the timing to get rid of all 3 fireballs as soon as they spawn. It's a harder and more inefficient way, which doesn't leave you much time to at all to hit his face, but it does generate ammo in case you didn't have enough from all of the candles. The candle all the way on the left of the screen has a guaranteed holy water in it, but that does not work because Dracula can't be hit on the ground. Semantics, I guess? Boomerangs or projectile weapons will help, but you're better off just doing it with the whip because trying to line up the sub-weapons between teleports and the fireballs is tough. Dracula takes quite a few hits to go down, and I'm at the very least entitled to say that I was able to beat him without a single cheap save state in between hits. As intended. Oh, finally. No! What? Are you kidding me? I should have known this was coming. I'm upset that I didn't, and that might be a weird thing for me to say, like, how could you know? How could I know? How could I know? How could I know, you ask? Let's go back to my childhood when I first gained access to YouTube through my family's terrible factory-produced Windows 7 computer. It was a computer that saw the wrath of my childhood exploration, including flash sites that weren't always reliable for safety, lots of Bloons Tower Defense 4, and that one time Plants vs. Zombies did the Zombatar thing. I loaded that computer with that junk, and nowadays it's in a landfill. I think it took 5 minutes to load Internet Explorer when I was done with it. Anyway, this was the prime era of Flash animation and Flash games when I was around 8 to 9 years old, and I was obsessed with ROM hacks, and things that resembled ROM hacks. If any of you watching were also in that sphere, you may have heard of a ROM hack called Brutal Mario World, where there were a bunch of bosses from various Super Nintendo media reprogrammed into Super Mario World. I thought that was so cool. Through that, I found something else. No, it wasn't Castlevania, and I don't know if footage of it even exists anymore. I'm pretty sure it was a Flash game where Luigi had to fight a 3-phase Dracula, something that I'm not even sure exists because I know basically nothing about Castlevania other than that. So I've seen this thing before, just 11 years ago. Then, of course, I watched a video of Tobuscus playing Happy Wheels, and I got scared of a Slenderman jump scare on a ball throw video. I didn't watch YouTube for a while after that. And then Minecraft came out on Xbox 360, so I no longer cared. That Flash game might as well be lost to time. Back to the real Castlevania, this version of Dracula is worse to fight than the first phase. Hits are still face only, fireballs are random, and whatever this thing is, it jumps all the time. Try getting under it, it's not gonna happen. At the very least, everything still does the same amount of damage, though I guess that doesn't help much if you barely survive the first phase. There's a special fanfare for when you finally beat Dracula and the game is over, but Castlevania is one of those games where you can play basically infinitely, as you'll be sent back to the start of stage 1 after winning, and the stage counter will go up to 19. There's no real point besides score, and I think 2 times is enough for me anyway. The Castlevania soundtrack is of a certain kind that will easily get stuck in your head for days after you listen to it, and the developers seem to think so too. The theme from the first level in particular is still alive and well in the sequels. To be fair, it's not anything that pushes the NES with clear percussion or bass, it's just that the quality of composition is high. Effective use of staccato notes and a melody able to control the setting plus tone throughout the game adds a unique sound to the title. The song switching during the final encounter was clever and enjoyable as well. As for the sound design, let's leave that to Super Castlevania. Most of what the original Castlevania has to offer are arcade sound effects. Every item's got a bleep and a bloop, the whip swinging is satisfying, but it leaves me wanting a bit more. The way I think of sound effect is if you can close your eyes and know what's happening on screen despite not seeing it. All of the enemies make the same noises, or silence, and the sound when your ammo is counted into the final score is ear-piercing. Just the music, yeah, just listen to the music. Having a category called World Design doesn't really work for this game. The only real world is Dracula's castle, and the game doesn't really go beyond that. Fans would have to wait until Castlevania 3 for more insight on that, but besides that, the castle itself is smartly designed. I really like that not all of the levels were designed with gameplay in mind. That might sound weird, but it feels like each of these levels were made with the castle structure in mind, like the flat courtyard and multi-level prison. It's a nice touch. I only wish that there was a little more outside of what we got. I'll echo myself from the beginning of the video. I don't think Castlevania was meant to be in HD, because, honestly, the outside sections, barring the final stairs, do not mesh. The pixels are meant to blend together, and that truthfully might just be because I played using an LED computer monitor and not a CRT. But whatever. There are some levels that look pretty good, and there are some that I think could use some work. The Catacombs in the first level are messy, but I like the last couple levels, and the third level. I said it before about the NES's storage, but I'll say it again. It's really impressive how many different tile sets and background parts there are in this game. All of the different details behind the basic gameplay foreground do a lot for the atmosphere. All of the enemies look about as you'd expect. You want Frankenstein? Here's a Frankenstein. You want a bird? Here you go. Dracula is, well, Dracula. Nothing of a special style or special detail or anything, just simple aesthetics. Minus the moon at the end and the castle at the beginning. Those get an extra decimal point each for style. Castlevania is the exact kind of game to ward off the newest generation with, and I don't mean that in the bad way. It rewards hard work with huge success. Everything in this game is learnable, predictable, and avoidable. All that matters is your own skill. This game is not fair to review after a single playthrough, because of the amount of time that goes into learning each part of the game. And furthermore, having infinite continues and being allowed to start at the beginning of each level is already forgiving enough. There are plenty of other NES games that cannot say the same. Yet, despite all of the consistency of the gameplay, there are still unwinnable scenarios that can arise no matter how well you play. The hallway leading to the Rebirth fight in particular can get out of control quickly. That's why it's most important not to lose any power-ups at that point you're holding on to. They might be the only things that can reliably get you through a part of the game like that. Castlevania has basically no story. You're Simon Belmont, and you're going to get rid of Dracula to save the world, as per usual. It's enough, I guess. Look, the way I see it, it's nice to have a plot at all. I would score games with stupid stories below a 5, and of course a 0 for games that have none at all. But I don't want Castlevania's rating to be low because of the story, since I thought the game was still good.